State of Play looks at the elections this week, and who better to do that but Dave Baylor of NKS Distributors and Steve Martelli from Wilmington City Council. And Mark Eichmann is also joining us as well. All right, we've had a couple of days to let it all sink in. Let's just go around the horn here. Steve Martelli, what do you think about the elections of a couple days ago?
Well, for one, I'm glad it's over. It's be nice not to fill up my recycle bin with any more literature and stop the block calls. But it's a relief on a lot of different levels. It's I think wonderful to send the congressional delegation that we're sending down in two very strong guys in Chris Coons and John Carney, good Delawareans, good public servants, guys who really have done a lot for this state. But most importantly, I think the thing that I get out of this is that it shows that the negative campaigning stuff isn't going to work here in Delaware. I was really disheartened when I saw a lot of this negative stuff going on, and I know these guys had to resort to it. I know, I get that, and that's fair. But oftentimes, when you're pushed to that level, you have to respond and react. And it was real disheartening from a citizen's perspective and from a candidate's perspective. As an elected official, I don't want to go down that route, and I won't go down that route. But a lot of folks do go down that route, and it's just not very palatable whatsoever. And so it was nice, and we talk about the Delaware way, and it was nice that the Delaware way basically came out on top. Not only that, but we also looked to Delawareans to take us to where we got to go, as opposed to folks who, nothing against transplants or folks are from other parts, but not only the candidates themselves were not Delawareans, but the money they were getting were not from Delawareans. They didn't have the support of the grassroots folks here in the state to say this is the candidate that we want, and eventually the elected official that we want down in Washington. And
Mark, I wanted to ask you, you were hanging out with Coons on Tuesday night, and I know you didn't phrase it to him exactly this way, but does he know how lucky he is? Does he appreciate how lucky he is? How many dominoes had to fall? And don't get me wrong, a worthy candidate, but some luck had to come into play here.
Yeah, it would have been a very different night if Christine O'Donnell had not won the primary. It would have been a lot. The race would not have been called at 8:01 Tuesday night if Mike Castle is the Republican candidate. I think it would have been, I think it could have gone either way. I think Coons could have won, but it would have been a much closer race, and maybe even one that a day later or even more than that, we still would have been looking at the numbers, and it could have been very, very close.
It wouldn't have got as much attention either.
Right.
National and international. I mean, there was going to be the national attention because of what the seat represented, but not because of who was there.
Right. Yeah. It would have gotten national attention maybe for some of the righter reasons.
Right.
Because it is it would have been in play.
Right.
And I think Coons certainly wouldn't come out and say, "Oh, I'm glad I ran against Christine O'Donnell instead of Castle," but he several times, and several people at Democratic Party headquarters Tuesday night thanked Congressman Castle and kind of went out of their way to say that the crowd needed to show their appreciation for Congressman Castle and kind of the way he handled himself and the way he ran the office.
Often during the campaign, remember what happened to Mike Castle. Democrats, get out there and vote, because if you don't, we could be the next Mike Castle. So it was a lesson learned.
That was the fear last night. The fear was that, or Tuesday night, that was the fear that a lighter voter turnout would go in her favor. And the problem was, and I mean, including myself, I was concerned that Wednesday morning when we woke up, she could have won it, because Wednesday morning when she woke up after the primary, she was the Republican candidate. I think the Republicans have some soul searching in this state to do about where they are as a party, to get organized. Clearly, they weren't happy that she represented them. The state definitely is not happy that she represented the state. The state became a laughingstock. And at the end of the day, people said, I think it was much more, we need to turn out to make sure she doesn't get elected, as opposed to let's vote for Chris Coons.
And
It's really the day after, Wednesday, the day after the election, you can kind of tell things have already kind of returned to normal, because we went out and saw Chris Coons at breakfast here not too far from our studios, and there was a handful of local photographers, so a couple of local reporters.
The regional and national media is.
It was not the zoo that the past 2 months have been with, from a reporter's perspective, fighting for spots and trying to get time with the candidates, both candidates. It's just been overwhelming, the interest and the attention, and just the day after that was already receding and kind of returning.
Exactly.
The national eye is kind of off Delaware.
And now that the spotlight is off Delaware, maybe this is the right time for the Republican Party to start over. Is that what they have to do at this point? They put all their eggs in the Mike Castle basket. It was a complete embarrassment. Now what do they do? Well,
I think they definitely have to start over. And I think first and foremost, Mike Castle was a great representative of Delaware for a very, very long time. Just a genuine guy, a gentleman. And I don't think, in my personal opinion, I'm not even a Republican, I just don't think Mike deserved to go out the way that he did. But I think also that what this election has shown, not just locally but nationally, is that there's a huge difference between winning a primary and winning a general. Right. And I don't think these candidates knew that, because in one breath they were saying we're against the party, and you look at a lot of what Christine O'Donnell has said and her campaign has said, we're against the party is this, the party that, and then they turn around and say, oh, the party didn't help us out, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Tom Ross, the chair of the state Republican Party, he said, look, we knew going in that she wasn't capable of winning a general. We weren't necessarily anti-Christine or anything like that, but we knew we had to put the best candidate up that's going to win a general election, and they resisted that, and they really have to reorganize themselves. And I think Tom Ross is the right guy to do it. I think Tom has the vision to do it, but he's got to get everybody else on board and kind of massage all those egos and everybody else to get things going in the right direction.
But you know what? You can't say that now. I mean, it's easy to say it now. It's all over with. But the truth of the matter is that was their candidate. And instead of embracing her, they distanced themselves from her. So how much did they really want to win this?
But I have to disagree, Dave. I don't think it was their candidate. It was her, you heard a lot in the primary about being a rhino, Republican in name only, and I think the Republican Party felt that she was a rhino as well, because she wasn't what the Republican Party was represented.
The Republican Party can sit up there and say that now, but the truth of the matter is when the primary was going on, they dismissed her. They dismissed everything. They accepted that Castle was a shoo-in, and so all the Republicans had to do some soul searching within. Are we going to be out in front the next time? Are we going to get behind candidates? Are we going to get back to the grassroots efforts of registering people for the primary to vote and really going forward with good, solid candidates, good, solid platforms, and making sure, as we say in sports, finishing.
Right, and I don't disagree, but I don't think anybody could have predicted. I mean, Mike Castle, having never lost a race in the state of Delaware ever, nobody
not
could
really even being close.
Right. I mean, nobody could ever envision that anybody, let alone Christine O'Donnell, could have upset him. And yeah, there were some issues with regards to their strategy in preparing for the primary and not taking her seriously. But in fairness, nobody envisioned it. But you know what? You look back again. I say almost 20 years ago, nobody envisioned Jim Sills unseating Dan Frawley, and that's why Jim Sills won and beat Dan Frawley.
All right, I want to look ahead to 2012, but I want to ask one more what-if question. We've been talking about Mike Castle, and we're seeing what's going on in Alaska with the write-in candidate, Lisa Murkowski. If Mike Castle had decided to run as a write-in candidate for this election, how do you think he would have done? It's easier to spell than Murkowski. It's a small state. He's got the name recognition. Was it a possibility?
I think it would have made it interesting, but you can't dismiss the number of Democrats that turned out, and that they truly pulled a lever. And here's where I think the social scientists really need to analyze this election. Was the lever actually pulled for Chris Coons, or was it pulled in fear that Christine O'Donnell went?
Yeah.
So if you ask that question, then the question begs itself, if Mike Castle was a legitimate write-in candidate, would people have wrote in for him versus pulling it for Chris Coons?
I think if you listen to a lot of the commentary, following the election, whether it be from exit polls or just roundtable discussions or just folks around the water cooler, a lot of people who were Republicans came out for Chris Coons. I mean, it's obvious. I think that's a lot of the reason why Coons won. If Castle had been a write-in, it would have been a really, really interesting situation, because you have a lot of Republicans who are going to vote for Castle. You have a lot of Democrats who would have voted for Castle in the Castle-Coons race anyway, would have voted for Castle. And then you have those folks who are going to go straight down the ticket for Democrats. And then you've got those Tea Partiers who, the reality is, are a minority race. There's not too many, a minority party who've got too many followers. They're so extreme. So, Christine would have gotten maybe a percentage, but I think it would have, I don't know, that dynamic of the Democrats that would have voted for Mike, the Republicans that would have voted for Mike, it would have made for a very, very, very difficult situation.
Let's look ahead to 2012 and just a couple of names here and some quick hits, quick thoughts. Mark, I want to throw out a name to you. Joe Biden. It's the year 2012. What are we seeing out of Joe Biden?
A re-election campaign for vice president, and I think anybody who says that he's going to be dropped,
that'll be fun to talk about for the next 2 years. Will he be dropped? But you don't think that's going to happen?
Something extraordinary, I think, would have to happen. Besides him, putting his foot in his mouth and making a big gaffe, anything like that. It's got to be something, really, really serious. I
mean, let's say we're.
I think for if President Obama were to do that, it would be admitting a huge kind of error and a hole in the administration that he needs to put in, say, Hillary Clinton or whoever people are talking about putting in there. It would just be a huge sign of weakness, and I don't see them projecting that message by doing that.
All right, Dave, Governor Jack Markell, 2012.
2012, he's running for re-election.
And winning?
Oh, I think
I guess we need an opponent at this point.
I think if the election were today, he would win hands down. I think with our economy being the way it is, people will say that he's managed the state as well as anybody could manage it with the national situation being the way it is. So, yeah, I see him winning hands down.
A lot of things can change in 2 years, but so far, so good for Governor Markell. And Steve, Tom Carper. It's his turn in a couple of years for a re-election. What do you think comes out of that?
I think he's going to
stay with it.
Stay with it, yeah. He's certainly got a lot of popularity here in the state. He's on line to be the next Joe Biden, really, in a long-serving seat.
Or could he be the Mike Castle of 2012?
That's fair.
Yeah. 2 years ago, what were we saying about Mike Castle?
Right.
Well, he's done everything. Why not go for Senate?
Here's the thing. If nothing changes in the next year or two, then people are going to want change.
We're going to have this conversation all over again. And I think the one thing that's lost on this whole election, the one guy that I think we may have overlooked has been Senator Ted Kaufman. I mean, just a gentleman, a great guy who's filled that role very, very well. And
really grew into that position.
Just a good man.
All right, Dave, Steve, and Mark, thank you very much.